A lot of these discussions that are happening online, they are, according to the scriptural way of processing information, they are a clanging cymbal and a noisy gong. It's just noise. You can be gentle and convicting, because why?
Because the Lord is.
Yes, and what's actually going to get that person to truth? Is it going to be yelling at them, screaming at them, condemning them? That'll make you feel better. And it may even make people that follow you say, thank God we have a voice that's so strong and preaching the truth. Finally, we don't hear this anywhere else. That may happen there, but it's not.
So you've convinced the people who are already convinced. Yeah. I think there's a difference between pointing out the absurdity of a concept versus the absurdity of someone's experience. Like, I think what we should not be mocking is the experience that someone is having. It is important for us to try to understand someone else's experience and what's happening inside of them.
Glory to Jesus Christ. It's Jelly. I'm here to welcome you to the What God Is Not podcast, where you could join Father Michael O'Loughlin and my godmother, Mother Natalia.
Almasia come.
Hakam.
Good job.
I'm not sure if that was pronounced correctly, so I said it quickly and harshly.
That's fine. How about
like Klingon the way I said it?
I'm trying to think others that I know. Remember when I surprised you guys with the Norwegian when we had Bishop Eric on?
Yes. Do you remember what that was, though? Because I remember the response. I'm just kidding. I don't remember the response.
Christus er uppstanden.
Okay. That sounds very Norwegian. And what's the response? Oh,
I
you
don't
remember the response, do you? That's why.
No.
That's why he said it.
Yeah. I was actually like, I really hope he knows the response and that this wasn't just a thing that I made up because I don't know what the response is. So I only memorized the first part.
I seriously doubt Bishop Varden listens, but I almost responded to your greeting with just a bunch of gobbledygook from the Swedish chef, because that's how it sounds. I'm being totally mocking of another culture, and I apologize to all the Norwegians who listen.
That's a great
especially
transition.
Since it was a Swedish chef, and I said Norwegian. Yeah.
Yes,
I know you're different countries.
That's actually a really good transition into our topic,
Nice.
Which I'm just going to skip banter and jump right in because we have to record an episode that's even shorter than the last one. So, okay, we need to be probably ending at, I'm sorry to break the fourth wall. I'm not really
I'm fine. I have somebody waiting for me when I'm done, but they're like doing something else until I get there.
So 12:25, 12:30, somewhere around there, nice. And then you can do the intro. Okay, great. The reason that's a good transition, talking about how insensitive you were to this other culture,
okay,
is because I want to talk about how I think we all do this and need to be better at being more sensitive. But I don't mean in the way that is being shoved down our throats by a lot of things going on in the culture. And I think the point that I'm getting at is we need to be sensitive and be attuned to how other people are experiencing things while also not letting it alter the course that God has called us on, basically. So I was thinking of this when we were talking about just the pews, and, we talked on our last episode about how I can actually understand when priests who have been ordained for a long time push back when a new bishop, especially a young bishop, is asking for a lot of change in them. Even if the bishop is asking for good change, and even if I think the priest should do it. So I'm not saying, and I guess this is the balance that I'm talking about, I'm not saying that it's good for the priest to disobey. What I'm saying is I understand to a degree the interior struggle that's happening in them, and that's the part that I want to speak into. And I was thinking of this, I went for a run with a friend of mine this morning, and afterwards he was asking me, like, what inspired me to be training for this particular race. And I was sharing that with him and why I think the Lord has invited me into this, or at least, as you and I have talked about many times, why the Lord has invited me into training for this race, even if I'm not going to actually do the race. I don't know. And then I was sharing just some of the things that I've learned in the training, about myself, about my relationship with the Lord, about what he's asking of me in life in general. And one of the things that he's asking of me that I've talked about on the podcast before is just to slow down in life, because I just do too much and I go too fast. And then I miss a lot of what he's trying to speak to me in the moment because I'm going too fast. And part of since this race that I'm training for is a long distance, some of my runs, I have to go super slow at a very low heart rate in order to just train my body to endurance, to train my body to be at a heart rate that it's like, okay, I can do this for a really long time. And those runs were really hard for me at first because I like to go fast. And I mean, let's be real, I'm not fast, but, but in the slowing down, one of the other things that I've realized is I just notice so much more of what's happening around me. And I don't just mean like when you're driving fast and everything's a blur, because again, I don't run that fast. So I don't just mean I'm moving too quickly to see the things that are around me. I mean that when I'm running fast, I'm just like all of my focus is on, okay, remember to breathe. 1 foot, left foot, right foot, don't die. And breathe in through your nose, breathe out through your mouth. And like all of the things to just remind myself that I'm not dying. And all of my mental energy is going into basically just like keeping myself alive, at least in my mind. And I'm missing like everything around me. So basically these slow runs have drawn me out of myself and helped me to see what's going on around me better. And I've realized this happens also when I go slower in life. And because, I just experienced this the other day where just my schedule was so packed. There was no breathing room in between meetings or in between recording or cooking dinner or whatever. And so like everything is so squished together that if one of my sisters needs something, or, hey, can I ask you a quick question? Or there's, I notice a really cute squirrel outside or something like that. Like there's no room to see anything outside of myself because I'm just focused on myself and what I'm doing in this moment and how I can get this thing done. And yeah, and I'm not seeing what's going on around me. And so the next transition I want to make, so that happens when I run with the environment and what's happening around me and what the Lord is trying to speak to me. It happens with the people around me when I'm just moving too fast in life. But that self-focus also happens when it comes to our ideas, our concepts, the things that we believe, the things that we've been convinced of are the truth. And this is fostered by news feeds, right? This is fostered by technology. Is like the more things that I look at that I believe in, that's what the newsfeed is going to be catered to. So all I'm going to be seeing all the time are the things that reaffirm the stuff I already believe. And so I'm just reading all these things that say, yes, I'm right. And one of the dangers of that, the self-focus that can create, is not just I'm right and other people are wrong, but also I'm right. And because everything I'm reading says that I'm right, and everything that I'm seeing is evidence in support of this, then when people believe something different, they're idiots. And it's absurd. And how could anyone, have they not read any of these articles that I'm reading? They must be completely this, that, and the other. And so all of that to come together, what I want to propose is the importance of, when we encounter someone with a different perspective than ours, we need to try to understand them, and to see what's happening inside of them, because otherwise there's like not even fruitful discussion about it. And things can't be received. And, it's like when you talked about the pews being taken out of your church, you were expressing, like you understand why there was pushback on that, because it's everything that people are used to, and it's what they grew up with their whole lives. And it's, there's like everything associated with that. Does that mean that you should have kept the pews in? I don't think so. Does that mean that you can understand someone while you're talking to them about taking the pews out? I think it does. I think that's very important, and it's important as a leader, but it's also just important in our relationships. I made a decision recently that I know someone's going to struggle with, but I'm very sure it's the right decision. But I also, when I share it with that person, want to have the conversation of it makes sense to me that this would be difficult for you, and these are the reasons that make sense to me. And I want to be in the difficulty with you, and I want to keep talking through this, and I want to support you in this. Also, this thing still needs to happen. But that's just there can be this arrogance in leadership where, and this self-focus where it's I know this is right. I know all the reasons it's right. I've maybe even said all the reasons it's right. And so people have heard that. They know all the reasons. They should just not ever think otherwise. And I'm just dropping this thing. And if anyone's upset about it, then that's on them, because I've told them all the reasons it's right. It's just a very different approach. Anyways, I rambled a lot. I have a couple more things, but I'm going to leave a space here.
Yeah. Yes, a couple things. I have a wonderful, if you've never heard or seen Michael Gasparo, he's well known in this area, but he's been on Lila Rose's podcast a couple of times and things like this. But he was my assistant in the class I taught at the seminary, and he's a wonderful man. He's a therapist, marriage and family therapist, grad level work. He's really incredible and a very beautifully sensitive soul. We had lunch yesterday and to talk about grades and things like that for the end of the semester, and I just prayed the Byzantine grace before meals, the prayer before meals he'd never heard of before, and he started crying. It's right there in the restaurant. It's oh my gosh, I'm tearing up. I was he perceives these things so well, and he's been a great corrective to my harshness when it comes to especially seminarians. Because when a man's studying for the priesthood, since I'm a priest, and I've seen so many people that have left the church because of priests. I talk to them every day that I'm usually harder on men that are studying priests or on other priests, and hopefully on myself, of course, first. But we were discussing when a priest or a therapist, in his case too, in both of our worlds of work, when someone comes to us for pastoral counseling, the first thing we do is make sure that we understand them correctly before giving advice. So, and he has so many different ways of doing that. So he even distinguishes reflective listening from like probing for more information. So the first thing you do when someone shares something, you nearly repeat back what they said so that you know you heard them correctly and they know you heard them correctly. And so that double hearing correctly. And then if you say, but I want to know more, so you ask some probing questions to do that. Like there's just that is so essential to these listening things that you're talking about. And it's not some hokey, let me just make sure that it doesn't really matter if you grow from this. You just need to be heard. You just need to have someone else that understands you. That is important. But this is the groundwork that allows the actual metanoia, the change, to happen. So yes, that is so very important. The other thing, and I think I've shared this before, and I apologize if I have, but I'm about to set some ground rules for some of our parish discussions after liturgy. We have great communities at both parishes. People love hanging out. They love talking for hours afterwards. But I think because many young people are formed by online debate or online discussions, that they're used to that style, which can be very objective. This is the way things are because this person said it at this time, or this person is who I follow. Like you said with the algorithms, right? They follow these algorithms and then they speak out of that mindset, because we all speak out of our own culture. We all act and behave out of the culture that we're immersing ourselves in, and people nowadays are immersing themselves in this culture. So I want to say two things, and I'm going to be more explicit. I'm going to develop this as time goes on. So there's some ground rules for fire pits, basically. There's some ground rules. One of them is that, first of all, and primarily, a lot of these discussions that are happening online, they are, according to the scriptural way of processing information, they are a clanging cymbal and a noisy gong. It's just noise. It's not actually doing anything. It's just noise. And the corrective to that, of course, is the quote from the scriptures is 1 Corinthians 13. So unless you have love, you are a clanging cymbal and a noisy gong. It's pointless unless you have love. So these conversations are honestly really good, and they could quickly go from being a noisy gong clanging cymbal to being a fruitful conversation, even the same topic, if it is understood that this is not a conversation we have unless God is brought in, and God is love. So basically, this must involve love, the love that is God himself, the love that he shows us, the love that we respond, that we love him with, the way that we love our enemies, the way that we love each other. This not this hokey concept of just affirming love that just lets you do whatever you want and doesn't cause any pain or suffering, or the opposite. A love that is able to be convicting, a love that draws me and you to conversion. So basically, if a moderator, usually me, stops the conversation and I say, where is 1 Corinthians in this? Where is God in this? Where is love in this? And then
Do you think you'll actually do that?
Oh, I've already done it.
Oh, okay.
I've already done it. And it like the guy that was I think was just talking out of statistics and reason and all these things like this. I need to dig up a quote from Chesterton, G.K. Chesterton, in his book Orthodoxy, when he talks about pure reason for the sake of reason is insane. In other words, if you're pure in an academic circle of pure reason with no love, no will, nothing of God, that's the definition of insanity. And I'm going to find that and put that there. And that's kind of how these conversations have gone. So I said that, and the guy that was kind of in this circle, he stopped and he immediately said, "You're right." And he just stopped. He didn't even continue talking. It was very, very clear to him. It was absolutely amazing. I was like, we need a lot more like this guy. Even though he was in the wrong, he realized he was in the wrong, and he changed immediately. And so but I'm going to do that. I was inspired by that moment, because in the moment I didn't know how to argue with him, because he's a lot smarter than me, and he had all these statistics about things that I didn't know the statistics. I can't argue with him on these topics, but it was causing anger and hate rather than any sort of engagement with God and truth and beauty and goodness. But he stopped immediately. He realized it because he was just in that world. So that, and then the second thing I'm going to propose, because I think that's the solution to exactly what you're saying. We keep ourselves in check. Is this being said out of a pilgrimage to salvation, to theosis, to union, and therefore love? And the second thing I'm going to say is something that I got from the companions, the priestly fraternity I had in Denver, and that's that we would say within the fraternity of companions, we are all family. We're all family, but we're not necessarily all friends. So, in other words, when we're together, we're family. And that used to kind of annoy me because I'm like, why can't we all be friends? I'm just a very friendly guy. I'm like, does that make sense? But the way that it works in this context, that light just came on. The way that works in this context is to say that if you want to go to a restaurant, if you want to go around the corner and sit in a different part of the parish property, and you want to talk about the minutia of some topic that is not for everyone's ears, you can do that. That's for your friends. You can take your friends, you can go off and talk about whatever you want. But when you're sitting around the bonfire, we're family. And so you need to understand that there's going to be people around the bonfire that are weak in a different way than you. So for instance, the topic came up the other night, and one guy just started ripping on therapy. Therapy is ridiculous and it's totally pointless. It's causing more harm. No one needs therapy. And I'm going, okay. We can debate the good of therapy, but you're overgeneralizing here. We can debate the good of other types of therapy. But I just mentioned, Michael Gasparo, an amazing therapist who taught the class with me and has I'm sure saved souls through his ministry of therapy. So, but I thought, the insensitivity here is that what if there is someone sitting around this bonfire that is in therapy or that should go to therapy and either will not go to therapy or will never bring it up, and now they're hiding an aspect of themselves from their family because they're afraid to get criticized. If we are mocking transgender people, if we're mocking same-sex attraction, if we're mocking all these things, like there's a place for those conversations, and it is good. But around the bonfire, there's people there you do not know. I hope there's people you do not know. And so we can talk into these things, but there has to be that added level of sensitivity that is going to say, if your little brother or little sister was struggling with this thing and they were sitting right here at this bonfire, how would you say it? We'd still seek the truth. We'd still convict wrongdoing. We would still, hold people accountable in conviction, including ourselves and mostly ourselves. But we would be doing it differently. And people, what I have found is in these communities, they assume that everybody's thinking the same and everybody's having the same experience, like you said with the algorithm, and they're not. So remember where you are. This is family. This is welcoming in guests. This is trying to draw people to Christ through love. Go have your conversation with your friends that is much more blunt and among like-minded people somewhere else, and have both of those things. We're all family here. We're not necessarily all friends, that we can talk about these harsher things that are part of our subculture. This is a general culture here, not the subculture.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I have two things, I think, that I want to say. The first is the way that you said this, I know is not what you meant. And so I just want to clarify that so that other people know It's not what you meant. There is a place for those, like there are certain conversations that we can have with our friends that are not meant for that same group. That part is true. The mocking shouldn't be happening even with our friends. So you said kind of the two together of like these conversations and like the mockery, and like there's a place for that and it's even good. And I'm like, not the mockery part. Like that's just not good.
There is, sorry, I'm going to add a little bit of nuance to that. You're right. Okay. It is not good, but there is a C.S. Lewis style mocking of the devil. There is there is a way of in a sense using humor to show the absurdity or even the evil of a way somebody thinks. So there may be a politician or someone, a voice online, and then among friends we can say, I pray for this person, but I don't think gentleness is going to, or even a family member, let's say a family member, gentleness is not going to convict this person, right? They actually need what I've needed many times, which I would say depending on I would say mockery is always an evil thing. The mockery is always, I think that's a good way to define it. But there is a way of saying you are acting absurd. What you're doing is harming people, and you need to stop right now.
Yeah.
That's not mockery. So good corrective. But there is a way of being usually within that friendship, usually within that community of saying, yes, I am judging you. Yes, I am calling you out. Yes, I am not going to be tolerant of what you're saying. And that's not mockery. So thank you.
Yeah. But the other thing that I want to say is, I guess, just reiterating what you just said of there's this tendency to just assume that everyone is thinking the same as you in this circle. But also not even just thinking the same, but maybe has the same experience. Like, you know, when someone, I'll just be very real about this. Like, since you brought up the transgenderism thing, I've just never struggled with this, right? Ever in my life. Not even close to it. And like I enjoyed doing things that were maybe stereotypically masculine growing up. Like, I liked throwing the football with my brothers and or playing Batman or Power Rangers or whatever. But like, I've never in my life felt like I was in the wrong body, right? I mean, I've struggled with body image issues like every person, but like, I've never felt like I was in the wrong body. And because that's such a foreign experience to me, it would be easy for me to think, if I'm in a group of my friends, that none of them have ever experienced this, because they're good, faithful Catholics. They're married, they have kids, they this, that, and the other. Like, they've never talked about it. And so like, obviously none of us have experienced this. And so I might be making jokes about it or something. I'm not doing this, but I'm saying, like, I'm using this as an example of what someone might do is like, you just think, you're just assuming like nobody's had this experience in this group. And so it's fine to joke about this. And like, probably nothing fruitful has come from the joking. Maybe there's a shared laugh, and in that shared laugh, there's like a brief moment of increased communion or something with your friends. But it's really dangerous if any person in that circle has ever had this experience. Like you're saying, they're now not going to share that. They now feel like a complete fool. They now feel like an outsider. They now feel like there's no place for them in the church. They now feel like, you know, all of this. Whereas like, if I had a friend who I knew struggled with that, and they're in the group, then I wouldn't make those same jokes. I wouldn't. And so we just like, it's not right to just assume, it's like, I don't know. I basically just said the same thing that you already said. But I wanted to reiterate it because I think it's a really important point.
Yeah. And I think that that's because I can see the criticism is that there's a pendulum. What was the topic of conversation we were saying recently? It's a pendulum effect. Oh, there's a video recently came out from Jonathan Peugeot about Kanye West and about Hitler, because Kanye West's new CDs, I think it's even called something Hitler. I don't know. He didn't even want to say the phrase, so I don't want to even look it up. But there's something about, and he says that there's unfortunately, there's this pendulum where since Hitler is so obviously rightly hated in our culture for the evil satanic things he did, there's a tendency, because if you mention in our culture, Jonathan Peugeot says, if I went down to Ventura Boulevard and I said, who is worse, Satan or Hitler? You know, it would be it gets some interesting answers. They're both equally evil, which is not the case. Satan is so much more evil than any human being, but the problem is that because of this, many have now, I don't know what Kanye is doing, so I won't speak to that specifically, but many are now, I think, because there's been a focus on humans like Hitler rather than on the demonic that inspires those humans, and there has been an equivocation of these humans, especially Hitler, with Satan himself, who inspired him, and assisted him in these atrocities. That now there are people that, since the focus is not on the proper enemy, the devil, and what he's done with people, that now the pendulum is swinging the other way, and now people are starting to praise Hitler, which is, not only evil and satanic, but incredibly, incredibly destructive. So
I've not heard anything about this.
Yeah, so I'll send you the video if you want. It's by Jonathan Peugeot, and he didn't even want to do the video, and it's really hard because it's really hard to say how can you in any way can you say that there's something worse than Hitler, but there is that we believe the devil is worse than Hitler, and that is in no way and should be in no way, and he's lightening what Hitler did. Of course not. What he did was completely satanic and evil, and it will always be. But there is that the people that are kind of pushing back on that, whether I don't even think they know they're doing it, and this is kind of Jonathan Peugeot's point, pushing back on that and saying, okay, there's now a pendulum where if we don't understand the gravity of who the devil is, because the devil's what greatest success is, telling people he doesn't exist. So proving he doesn't exist. So if we forget that he exists and that he inspired Hitler, he inspires me and my sins in a different way, thank God. The pendulum's going to keep on swinging, where now people are going to push back on that, and they're going to start praising Hitler for things he did, which is, again, evil and satanic and destructive. But so there's this pendulum, and so somebody may hear what you and I are saying, Mother, in this case, and say, no, the focus needs to be on less gentleness, and it needs to be on the conviction and the truth and the strength that comes in. We need to preach these things from the rooftop, these truths that you can't, our whole society is being brought down by these sexual revolution and all these things that have come from it. So therefore we cannot speak lightly of these things, or people will be misled. There's too many people speaking too lightly about this and promoting it. Yeah, exactly. She means misled. That was from the previous podcast. So we need to understand that we cannot be part of that pendulum. We cannot be part of the swinging too far the other direction. But we can say you can be gentle and convicting. Because why?
Because the Lord is.
Yes, and what's actually going to get that person to truth? Is it going to be yelling at them, screaming at them, condemning them? That'll make you feel better. And it may even make people that follow you say, thank God we have a voice that's so strong and preaching the truth. Finally, we don't hear this anywhere else. That may happen there, but it's not.
So you've convinced the people who are already convinced.
Yeah. I don't even want to say that it's not going to move somebody. There are probably people that need exactly that need to be very harshly convicted and receive no human mercy. They Christ's mercy certainly, and so I don't want to criticize that as an overgenerality, because there may be some people, and God may send people with that personality to those individuals, but in general that is not going to be helpful at all.
One disagreement that I want to make, and then one furthering. Wow, there is like a crazy storm that's about to happen outside.
Nice.
The one disagreement is, I don't think that it's right to hate Hitler. I think it's right to hate everything he did, all the evil actions.
Did I say it's okay
I would
to
not
hate
agree.
Hitler?
Yeah, you said he's rightly hated.
Okay, I did not mean that at all.
Okay, so you just meant
sorry.
like everything, like all the evil that he did, it's right to hate that.
Yes.
Yes,
Sorry,
absolutely. Okay, great.
Yeah, we hate the devil in that sense, but we love our enemies. So yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And then, the thing that I wanted to say, because this distinction just came to mind as you were talking about, as far as like the mockery and the absurdity sort of thing, like pointing out the absurdity, but not mocking. I think a good distinction is, first of all, I think it's good to discuss the absurdity of certain things. But the distinction that comes to mind is like, I can say, and I would say in any circle, how absurd I think it is that the government would think they have the right to impose certain things like on the church or things like that, or legalizing certain things or whatever. But I think there's a difference between pointing out the absurdity of a concept versus the absurdity of someone's experience. Like, I think what we should not be mocking is the experience that someone is having. Like, we should not be saying, right, like, because this isn't my experience at all, I should not be saying, like, can you imagine thinking that you're a woman when you're actually a man, and ha, 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 and we're all laughing at this. Like, yeah, that's not laughing at the devil, which I know you're agreeing with all of this, but, like, I was able to figure out that distinction as you were talking. Like, that's different than saying, like, the government wouldn't tell us that we're allowed to do this or we're not allowed to do this. So why would the government possibly be able to say we're allowed to do this and not this? Like, pointing out that absurdity and laughing at the ridiculousness of that is different than laughing at someone's experience or someone's potential experience or someone's potential struggle or something like that. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, so I think that's just what we need to be attentive to. And having the humility to, like, you know, in our community, like, we'll call each other out, typically privately, like not in front of anyone, maybe in front of people if it's just the community here. But if there's like a guest here or something like that, we'll call each other out afterwards, you know, of like, hey, that joke was off color. And that wasn't like, and that can be received within our community because we know one another's hearts. And so we know that, like, if you were thinking this through, if this person was right in front of you, if you knew that this person was struggling with this thing, of course you wouldn't joke about that. And, like, I know your heart and I know that you just weren't thinking any of that when you made this joke, kind of thing. You know, it's not like, how could you make that joke? You're a terrible person. Then you're just doing the same thing. Yeah. So I think that there's having the humility, like the guy that you were talking about at the fire pit, of like, when called out on it, he was just like, you're right. Yeah.
The one thing I will say is that, just to pray for me and to pray for other leaders who are guiding these things, there are people who will nowadays say it's fine to, even if somebody was sitting there, to say it. And I would say it right in front of their face, you know. And I think that is most of the time done with a lack of love. You know, sometimes sometimes we have personality disorders and things like that we're just not able to process that nuance, you know, because of the way our brain works, and that there needs to be a certain gentleness there as well, and also a firmness. You know, I know you may not be able to understand this, but I'm creating ground rules that say you cannot do this. You know, and I know you may not agree with me, you may not understand, but around this fire pit that I'm in charge of making sure is oriented towards the kingdom of God, I know you don't understand, but you cannot do this. You know, there's obviously there's sociopaths and things like that are walking around us, you know, and even much lesser versions of that same thing. So yes, there are situations, and I'm only saying this to just say, do pray for us, because it's not, you know, it's not as easy as saying, what would you do if you had a family member that had this? They'd be like, well, I'd tell them their face. I would never hang out with them. I'd never see them again. Like, that's just, why would you do that? You know, and it's like, okay, well, that's, you know, that's not the direction I want this conversation to be going in. So,
Which goes back to the original, what I was trying to say originally is, like, it is important for us to try to understand someone else's experience and what's happening inside of them. And
Is that rain?
yeah, so like, yeah, you can hear the rain.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
It is, yeah, it's crazy storming right now.
Nice.
Yeah, so like if that family member were right in front of you and you were saying those things, like what's actually happening inside of your family member, not just what's the point that you're making and what are you thinking, like how is your family member receiving that kind of thing? But yeah.
It's interesting that both sides of the political spectrum are now growing more and more harsh. Like not listening, just saying, if you do this behavior, you think this way, no forgiveness, you're canceled, I'm not doing anything. And both sides of the political spectrum are doing that. I hope not both sides of the religious spectrum as well. I don't know, both sides of the religious spectrum. Those seeking Christ should not be giving into that. But we live in a culture that does, so it's hard to purge.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Father Michael.
Thank you. I'm going to do the spiel. We should do the spiel since we didn't do it last time, but I can do it if you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Thank you all for listening. You can find us. You found us somehow, but you can find us on all the different platforms, audio and video. We have a website, whatgodisnot.com. We have an email address, whatgodisnotpodcast@gmail.com. We have a nonprofit called Photina, Photina. Put a .com on the end of that, or .org on the end of that, .org. Mother's frozen, or she may be correcting me. .org on the end of that. And then we also have a Patreon page. You can donate to our nonprofit that has been such a delight and a life-giving thing for me and for our organization to be able to support the things that we support. And you can find all that out on our website, photina.org. We have a Goodreads page where you can see what we're reading. Beth texted me this morning, or the other day, and said, "Can you please give me 2 books?" And I was like, "I have not read 2 books. I'm not reading 2 books right now." So I don't quite know what to do. Maybe I'll put a video or something up that I have. It's just I've not been able to do that recently. But yes, when we do read books, they end up on Goodreads, and you can see what we're reading, and Beth can see what you're reading, and she moderates that very wonderfully. I'm going to stop there. We are on social media, Instagram and Facebook, and I'm on Twitter at Padre Michael O. So yeah, okay. I think the storm is causing... Mother, can you hear me at least? Uh-oh.
I can now.
Okay. Storm is causing weird things in Amish country where Mother is, so I'm going to go ahead and give a blessing.
It's true. We got to wrap this up. Yep.
Blessing, let's do prayer. Prayer
intentions. Yes. I'll ask for prayers for my friend Jess.
Okay. And I will ask for prayers. Okay. We're gonna call the person I have in mind that is involved in a lot of this. We're just gonna call him Bill, not his real name, of course, but just pray for Bill that all the nuances of these discussions I have multiple nights a week, multiple places, can be handled well. So okay.
Great.
The Lord bless you and keep you, cause his face to shine upon you, have mercy on you. May our Lord soften your own heart first, and may you be convicted of your own behaviors and thoughts first before anybody else. May we be most critical of what God has called us to in the ways we do not live up to that. May we also be receptive to what Christ is calling in our own lives, and then also within our communities, that we may truly be Christ in these discussions and understand his love, his truth, his beauty, his goodness, also his conviction and his accountability. May our Lord soften your heart to receive all these things, and mine as well. May our Lord grant you everything you need to continue to grow in holiness and move towards salvation itself. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Love you.
Love you too, Mother. Bless you.